All right, we're continuing learning this speech that the Lubavitcher Rebbe Menachem Schneerson, gave in 1991. The speech is based on the idea that, first of all, Moshiach is the goal of all mankind, and it's the hope of all mankind, Moshiach. And Moshiach is going to be a Jew, just like Moses, but even more so. Moses, it says, only took 1/5 of the Jews out of Egypt. Mashiach is going to wake up all the Jews, and they're all going to go out of their ignorance, indifference, and all the Jews will return back to do all the commandments with love and with awe and with fear. And all the religions, all the non-Jews in the world will turn only to the Creator. Worship only the Creator. There won't be any other religions in the world. There won't be any religions in the world. People will just worship the Creator who's creating them, right? Infinitely close. You don't have to go to church to feel that. So that's the job of the Jewish people, to educate. But first of all, the Jewish people have to do it themselves. They have to feel themselves what God is, and how close God is, and how good God is. And one way of doing that is by realizing that everything in the world is being created by God all the time. Everything, every detail, and every detail in the world has a message. Every detail has a message. As could be understood, it's not the type of a message that we can interpret now exactly. Because, I mean, what are we going to do with the fact? Because what is our goal now? Our goal now is selfishness. Selfishness. People are not interested in serving the Creator. You look and see a big field and there's millions of blades of grass. What do I care? But if you look at the field and say there's millions of blades of grass, and it shows how infinitely amazing God is. I wouldn't have made so many blades of grass. Think of and every blade of grass is amazing. Look at a blade of grass, it's got roots and it has photogenesis, whatever it does over there, and the xylems and the phloems and the this and that, and how it nourishes itself, and how from above and from below, and it drinks water, and it gets nourished from the ground. Every single blade of grass, there's how one knows how many billions to the billionth power of blades of grass in the world, and how many, that's only grass. There's different types of grass. What does that possibly add to me? That I can make money, I can be more popular. No, it teaches us something about how to serve God. So the Rebbe is giving us a few examples of how we can learn from everything. We're not just talking about doing mental tricks to keep ourselves occupied, right? To keep ourselves occupied. I remember we used to drive in the car. So we'd say, find the license plate that ends with number 3. Who's the first one? Just arbitrary things. This is not arbitrary. We're talking about messages from the Creator, how to change our perspective on life, to live in God's world and not just in our world. So here the Rebbe gives an example. Days of the week and the days of the month. That's a pretty important thing, days of the week and days of the month. That's time. We live in time. If somebody tells you, you're being evicted from your house for 1 week. Oh, that's terrible, a week. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean a week. I meant a month. What? A month? I didn't mean a month. I meant, I just make those mistakes all the time. I meant a year. What? A year. So time is very important. Time is a very essential thing. Time, we're living within time. What time is, we'll talk about another time. But nevertheless, time is sending us a message. So the Rebbe says the days of the week, for instance, that was set by God. For some strange, unexplainable reason, as far as I know, the whole world, it could be not. The whole world has a 7-day week. The whole, I don't know, what do you want to call it? Civilized world. I don't know. I mean, okay, call it the civilized world. I don't know if you call the Nazis and those people civilized. I mean, they did things that animals wouldn't do, but let's go call it the civilized. So the whole world has a 7 day. I think even the Chinese, the Japanese, these people, they never even heard of the Torah. They have a 7-day week. Huh? Is it true? Look it up. I never looked it up. I know I have a friend that went to learn karate in Japan, and they worked out for 6 days of the week. On the 1 day they rested. I don't know if it was that Shabbat they rested. Anyway, days have 6-day weeks. Like I said to you before, Napoleon tried to change it, made it a 10-day week. It didn't work. Somehow or other, it's ingrained in this people's psyche, I don't know, in the society, 7-day week. So 7-day week, that's a thing from God. But then there's a thing called the month. The month is a little bit sort of more malleable. It changes. According to Judaism, the month can be either 30 days long or 29 days long. That's how long a month can be. Either 30 days long or 29 days long. It used to be that it depended on the Jewish people determining the moon. Afterwards, there sat rabbis that a couple hundred years after the temple was destroyed, and because they realized there wasn't going to be any judicial courts anymore, so any great high court, so they set the times. But that's also done by man. They set the times. So the months are sort of like our work, what we do. That's our input, and the days of the week, that's God's input. Okay, so now, of course, the days of the week and the days of the month coincide. Every day of the week falls on some day of the month, right? Some day of the month. So this year, so there's also special days. For instance, there is Rosh Hashanah, Pesach, special date. It can fall on different days of the week. That's different days of the week. It falls on the same day of the month. Rosh Hashanah is always the first day of Tishrei, and Passover is the 15th day of Nisan, all the time. But it can fall on different days of the week. The same thing is over here. We have this year, when the Rebbe was saying this, it corresponded to the same thing as this year. Just when the Rebbe said it, happened to be in the Torah portion, Chukat, that we read last week. And by us, this year, which is 30 years later, we're learning Chukat. Okay, we're learning Balak. I'm sorry. We're learning Balak. I'm sorry. So okay, except for that, what the Rebbe is saying is exactly corresponding to what we have. The 10th day of the month of Tammuz, that's this month, fell out on Shabbat. So it will be by us. Next Shabbat is going to be the 10th day of the month. 10th day. And the fast of the 17th day of Tammuz also falls out on Shabbat, the Shabbat after that. Okay, Yesh Lomar, we can say that this is also in the difference between the 7th day of the week, Shabbat, and the 10th day of the month, which is the date today. So, yeah. And the 7th day of the week, that shows on a total completion of the cycle of the creation. Shivat Yemei Bereshis, the 7 days of creation. Shivat Yemei Hekev, the 7 days of the cycle. Ubashorsham, and the source of these 7 days. I mean, ask yourself a question: why did God create the world in 7 days? He could have created the world in one instant, no time. Boop, it's just a world. The Torah tells us that he schlepped it out for 7 days. And the Rebbe, Lubavitcher Rebbe, stresses, and also it's in Sefer Yetzirah, other places, that these ideas of seconds and minutes and hours, this comes from Kabbalistic principles that existed before the physical world. The world was created according to these principles. So the 7 days of creation were exactly 24 hours. And the 7 days were 7 exact days of 24 hours. And each hour had 60 minutes, just like we do now. I know there's rabbis that say, no, there was a time warp and that there was, the theory of relativity. And back then it says that 1 day in God's eyes is 1,000 years. But the Rebbe says not. He gives different reasons. In any case, why did God create the world in 7 days? Why didn't he create it instantly? Why didn't he take 20 days, 3 days? Because 7 corresponds to what's called the personality of God. That's called God's 7 emotions. That through them he creates the world. Now, how did God get these 7 emotions? That's it. And you can ask as much as you want to, but you're not going to get an answer because there's no answer. That's just what God is. It's like asking, why do people's mouths below their nose? Why do we have to put a mouth? Why don't we put a mouth on the top of our head? Why not? Who says why not? Because we don't want the food to roll down our into our eyes. That would, right, if it spills. So make a bigger lips. Make a big lip. Put a mouth on the top of your head. Make big lips like a big funnel. What do you say? Well, let's make a new person. You think it'll go? That's what God does. What do you want? That's the creation. God created the world in 7 days. Yom Rishon, the first day, corresponds to God's emotion, God's emotional attribute of chesed, if you want to call it love. The second day is gevura, severity, until the 7th day, which is Malchut. That's godliness, which godliness. This is the Malchut. That's God's kingship. That's levels of godliness that are drawn into the world. That's the number 7. 7 represents God. 7 aspects of God. That's why he created it in 7 days, because that's the principle of, that's the personality of God. What happened over here? 1 minute. Where are the pictures? Where are my pictures? Let's go back 1 second. 1 minute. What's going on over here? Why is it working? Just a second. Excuse me. Usually this is a sign something's not working over here. 1 second. Excuse me 1 second. Turn to the meeting. Excuse me. Trying to figure this out over here. Why isn't it working? Here. Oh, here it is. There we go. Oh, there we go. Okay. Good. Back. Little by little, I'm figuring out how this thing works. Here we go. Turn to the meeting. This is very, very frustrating, The world is frustrating. Just 1 second. I'm sorry for this terrible delay. 1 second, let me pause. All right. On the other hand, the revelation of the number 10, we said number 10, that shows on a level of godliness, a type of godliness which is above the world. Godliness which is above the world. This godliness, which is so the 7 days of creation, this is God doing it alone. The 10 days, the number 10, in general, the days of the month, this is relevant to our service. We determine when the month starts. Shemosif Machadesh, that we increase on the creation of the world, which the creation of the world says comes from God's emotions. We add on what's called God's intellect, 3 mochin. It's not by accident that God promised Abraham 10, the land, Israel, where the 10 nations lived, and we only got 7. Until Moshiach comes, he's going to have the 3. The job of the Jewish people is to add these 3, which is called the 3 aspects of awareness of God in the world. So there'll be a complete revelation of godliness, in addition to what's called God's emotions in the creation. There'll also be what's called God's intellect, or in simple language, we'll see and we'll be aware of the Creator. Adam, in our service of God, and what is written, Al Tatzer al Moav, it says the Jewish people, it says God told them, don't make a war with Moab. with Moab. Why not? And Chassidus explains that Moab was one of these three nations that God did not give to the Jewish people. He promised it to Abraham, but he didn't give it to him. Shebizman, nowadays the Jewish people only have 7 nations. Kavan she'ikar avoda, since the main service of God nowadays is to vorer, is to refine and to purify what's called the 7 aspects of God, nature. And the service of, now we use our intellect what? In order just to refine our nature. But in the future, redemption, Vashlema, in the future redemption by means of Moshiach, at least in the later stages, in any case, Yidnu Kol Eser Artzot, they'll be given all of the 10 nations, the Kini and the Kenizi and the Kadmoni, which corresponds to Ammon, Moab, and Edom, it says. Kevet Sha'az then will be the service of God and completion. And then will be Avodat Gimel Mochin, also the 3 aspects of awareness to themselves. Shlemus Elu told us Peretz, Shalamaylam Elu told us Shemayim, till there'll be a revelation of godliness in the physical world. Okay, so what are we talking about here? We're talking about the creator and we're talking about the creation. Now we're aware of the creation. And we're not aware of the creator. To the point that now we feel that we're the creator. We create everything. Everything is inside of me. And we act accordingly. But the whole idea is that people start to realize there's a creator. I don't know if you've ever heard of this. There's a thing called the 12-step program. You ever this? It's pretty interesting. It's to get out of addictions. It's not 100% works, but as far as I know, it works better than anything else. And the whole idea of it is that a person becomes addicted to something, addicted to whatever it is, to drugs, to drinking. There's like 1,000 different types of addictions. A person becomes addicted to something, so he can't get out on his own powers. He can't. He's trapped within his own self, and any solution that he gets is already tainted by his ego. So the only way he can do it is to get somehow or other outside of his ego, somehow or other, to connect to a power that's above him, to totally give himself over to some sort of a power, the power of health, the power of whatever. So pretty much anything works. I mean, even idolatry would work to this. So, in that aspect, idolatry is much better than atheism, and a lot of other aspects also, but nevertheless, because at least it connects you to something. Your mind gets connected to something other than your emotions. And that's what the Rebbe is saying. You want to fix up the emotions of God, the physical world, you have to connect to the mind of God. Nowadays, you only connect to God's mind, the awareness of God, loving God. This is in order to fix up your personality. I just use the thing of addiction just as an example. To fix up your personality, to have more love of the appreciation of life, to be more positive in life. But in the future, it's going to be reveal these three aspects of God called Chachma Bina Das, that our interest won't be just to fix ourselves up. Our interest will be to become more and more aware of God for the sake of the truth. Just to have more and more truth and awareness. Like there were genius composers. You ever listen to music? I like music. Amazing compositions. You hear these people, just incredible compositions of Rahman, just amazing. And these people, they just lived that they would get more inspiration. Beethoven, these people, more inspiration. They weren't looking to fix up the works that they did and to improve what they did. New inspiration, new ideas. New. Well, that's what the world is going to be, but everyone's going to be an expert, and not just in music, and a whole different type of harmony. The whole world will be the symphony of meaning and godliness, but there'll be a new awareness. That's called the 3 aspects of mochin, of awareness. So that's represented by the number 10, the 10th day of the month, in the 7th day of the week. So that already hints at the future redemption, when there'll be all 10 aspects of the soul, including the 3 mochin, 3 type of awareness of God, will be revealed in the number 7. Hapula the Sheva, this uniting, and the outcome of uniting number 7 and 10. This is also the fact that the world also has these 2 aspects. In the Torah Shabbat, in the written Torah, In the written Torah, it says that the world was created in 7 days. And it says in Pirkei Avot, the Torah says the world was created in 7 days. In Pirkei Avot, which we're learning, says I'm sorry. I skipped. I went too fast. In the Torah, it says the world was created in 7 days. Like it says, Vayechal Elokim b'yom hashvi'i, that God finished his work on the 7th day. And the Torah Shabbal Peh, in the Torah Shabbal Peh, it says, this is Pirkei Avot. It says, Pirkei the Shabbos in this chapter of Shabbat, it says, Eser Maimoros Nivra Olam. It says that God created the world with 10 utterances. Yeshlom, we can say that this fits in with what we said, the difference between the written Torah, which says the world was created in 7 days, and the oral Torah, the Talmud, the Mishnah, which says that the world was created in 7 days, but it was created with 10 utterances. That's the difference between 7 and 10. In the written Torah was given by God. There, it's not relevant that a person can add anything on to the written Torah. Can't add on, you can't subtract. That's the way it is. If there's one letter missing from a scroll of Sefer Torah, then the whole thing is disqualified until you fix that letter up. Mitzad darga, or you add a letter. It's also forbidden. Mitzad dargazu, according to this, of drawing down godliness into the world, that's the written Torah. Shlemos Abriya, the creation is complete with the number 7. This gives power, Lavuda, the bureau of the 7 midos. This gives us power to refine what's called the 7 emotional aspects of God, revealing God in the world, nature. That's the written Torah. The oral Torah, namely the Talmud, was revealed mostly by means of people. Most of the Talmud, there's some aspects of the Talmud which were, says, Halacha Moshe Misina, which were given to Moshe. But there's a lot of laws in the Talmud that God purposely did not explain in the Torah, that he gave the principles of deriving these laws, he gave those to Moses. So it says the majority of the oral Torah, the Mishnah, the Talmud, this was revealed by the wise men of Israel in the course of the generations. That they learned according to one of the principles that the Torah is learned from. Or sometimes the rabbis made what's called a fence around the Torah, sayag the Torah. In any case, that's what the Talmud is. The Talmud are laws. Some of them are laws which God passed down to Moses. Some of them are laws which God only passed down the basic code to Moses, but he also gave the rabbis the key to unlock these codes, and that's the arguments. And then there's laws that God told the rabbis to make themselves. By means of this, there's a lot of new laws and details in the 613 commandments of the Torah. For instance, all the laws of Shabbat are not mentioned in the Torah. In the Torah, it just says, don't light a fire and you can misinterpret everything. Don't go out of your house. And therefore, Hadgasha, the emphasis is the 10 in the oral Torah. There, the emphasis on what we do. That's the 10 utterances that God created the world with. That the oral Torah revealed to us in Pirkei Avot, because of the service we serve, what we do to serve God. That's the oral Torah. So this gives the power to serve. I mean, it's very strange if you think about it. God gave the Torah. You ever look at the Torah, look at the Bible? You can't understand it from the beginning to the end. The whole thing is not understandable. The stories you can understand a little bit. The stories also are pretty ridiculous. I mean, on their own. They just don't make any sense. That was one of the reasons I became religious. I read the story of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They didn't do any miracles. They didn't talk about going to heaven. They didn't talk about hell. They didn't even give any commandments. There was no rituals. There was no holidays. Abraham, Isaac, they were the fathers of Judaism. I couldn't figure out, why were they the fathers of Judaism? What gives them the power? What gives them what did they do? Right, what did they do? So he says that's all in the written Torah. comes along the oral Torah and explains what's going on, who exactly they were, what exactly they did, why God even wrote stories about them in the Torah, but they didn't do anything. The oral Torah comes, there's no doubt that God wrote it. There must be some reason, right? God took his son Abraham to sacrifice him. What we're supposed to sacrifice, what's the point? So there has to be some explanation. The explanation is given by the by the oral Torah, and it has to be that God wanted them to explain it, because it just begs to be explained. The whole thing is not understandable. This, by the means of this gives us the power to fix up, to fix up the world, to add on and make a new thing, an addition, and clarify things in the creation, revealing the number of 10, which we said is also God's intellect, the ultimate completion by means of avoda ba'olam, our serving God in this physical world, until Elu told those parrots, until these are the generations of parrots. Parrots means to break through, until the coming of the Moshiach. Okay, so what did we say from all these jumble of words? What's the point? God put us in the world. God creates the world. He wants there to be a world, and he wants us to fix the world. The world is represented by the number 7. God created it in 7 days from God's 7 emotions. That's also represents the written Torah. The written Torah tells us that God created the world in 7 days. But our work that we do in the world, that requires our intellect to put new awareness of God, of the Creator, of the meaning of the creation. And that's represented by the number 10, 7 emotions, but also the 3 correspond to God's Chachma Bin Adat, God's intellect. That's the 10 Sfirot of God. That's our work. That's what we do from below. And that, by means of us working properly, we can refine the world, or like we said so many times, just add a little bit of light, intellect to the world. Put the Aleph in the Gola, in the exile, and that will bring the future redemption by means of the Rebbe, Moshiach Tzidkeinu now, as we're going to continue, God willing, tomorrow. Now let's do the Yom Yom. That, by the way, is the importance of learning Chassidut, because it just gives you a whole different outlook on day-to-day situations. One of the first Rebbe's great and close Chassidim went in for a private audience with the Rebbe. It's called Yechidut. The Rebbe asked, how are things? How is your financial situation? How is the family? The Chassid complained bitterly that his financial situation, he lost a lot of money and it deteriorated. And that he owes money, and he used to give charity. He wants to give charity. And the Alter Rebbe, the first Rebbe, said, you just told me what you need. What does God need you for? You are needed by God to illuminate your environment with Torah and service of the heart, prayer. That's what God wants from you. That's what God needs from you. Your livelihood and what you need, God will provide for you. You do what God needs, and God will do what you need. So that Chassid, he realized it changed this whole paradigm, and he sat and learned for a while, and sure enough, after a while, he devoted himself to learning. All of his wealth, etc., came back. Have a good day with Mashiach. Now, God willing, at 3:00, we'll meet again and learn continued episode of Bilam and the Jewish people. Have a good day with Mashiach now.